And we're going to ask you, mute yourself, please. All right. Lee Little, welcome. Thank you. Omazua, welcome. Thank you. Jackie, thank you. Thank you for coming. Antoinette, thank you for coming. Maureen, happy to see you again. Susan Crossman, our first presenter of the day. Woohoo! Irma, it was nice to see you. Steve, so nice to see you as well. So yeah, if you go ahead and mute yourself, and then Steve has a welcome message for us.
I do have a welcome message. First of all, welcome to day 3 of the Senior Heart Song Summit. It has been an amazing summit so far, and I expect that we will just build on that today. I'm always delighted to have my good friend Susan Crossman on the stage. This morning, while I was walking out in the woods here, I was thinking and reflecting upon and you have to understand that I come from a manufacturing background. So if we had a heart song factory, what would the output look like? What would we come out with on the other side? And one of the reasons I'm asking that of myself particularly is because I want to be sure that I'm moving in the direction that I want to be going, that my heart song is, not only does it feel good, which is super uber important to me, but also that it's making a difference in the world. So as we spend some time together today, as we listen to Susan and our other presenters, if you can just think about how is your heart song making a difference in the world? What does that look like? Is it helping people to get more books out in the world? Is it helping people to connect with more people? Is it, feeling your heart song resonating within such that everywhere you go, there's a feeling of walking on sunshine? And with that, I want to turn the time over to Irma, who has got a writing exercise for us. One of the things we've started to do recently, this summit, is include some writing prompts in order for us to really bring in what it is that we're trying to do. So Irma, over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to day 3 of our Senior Heart Song Summit. We just about have this in the bag, and today we have speakers, we've got exercises, we have a little bit of touching within us and in ourselves, where we go deep without even meaning to. It just so happened that this whole 3-day summit, we've had to focus on ourselves. I focus on leadership. I teach about leadership. I teach about how you find your heart song as a leader. And today our writing exercise is going to have the acronym LEAD. I would like you to write 3 words. I like the number 3 today. Or you could write a sentence, but talk about the first letter, which is L, which is love. I want you to go deep and think, do you love yourself first before you give to others? Is your cup full before you share with others? And when you do that, are you able to show love the way you show it to yourself? And we are going to have a minute. Olivia, if you could time it for us, please.
So a minute. All right, here we go. Okay, minutes up.
The next word we're going to talk about is empathy. To be a good leader, you need to show empathy. You need to show empathy first to yourself and then to others. Write down again a sentence or 3 words about what empathy, how do you show empathy? What does it mean to you? And a minute.
Minutes up.
Thank you. For those of you who just came into the room, we will recap. We're doing our words today, our writing exercise. First word is about love. Second one was about empathy. And something I wanted to mention about empathy is it doesn't mean that you will be mean to someone else if you feel you cannot feel empathy in your heart for that person. Because at the end of the day, we are human beings and we always try to be kind. And as a leader, that is very important. The next letter we're talking about is acceptance. Do you accept that not everyone you work with will think like you, will act like you, that people need to be treated different? Write down a sentence in 3 words. What does acceptance mean to you as a leader?
Minutes up.
Thank you. And remember to mute for now, please, everyone. Our last letter that we are using, to be a good leader, you need to choose the direction you want to go into. Do you want to be altruistic? Do you want to be the authoritarian? What direction would you like your life to go, perhaps, to be able to become the leader you would like to be? So 3 words or a sentence, please.
Minutes up.
Thank you. And as we did the other 2 days, I would like some of you to share exactly how you felt about it. Who would like to start? You can also put it in the chat. Susan.
Sure. Thank you, Irma. That was a beautiful exercise, and it's not one that I've ever done before. So I appreciate the opportunity to go a little deeper inside and get new distinctions on who I am and who I'm here to be. And I think the conclusion really that all of those 4 writing prompts have given me is that it's really pretty magnificent how wonderful that the more we lead ourselves from love, the more we have to give others, and the more expansive our dreams and goals can be as we're heading, for me, it's outward and into expansion, into the unknown, into that next adventure. And those who are aligned with where I'm going, they're welcome to come along on my journey, and let's lead each other.
I like that, Susan. Beautiful.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Megan?
Sure. The 3 words that I wrote down for direction, the last sentence, the last prompt, I just wrote 3 words, and I did support, challenge, and learning. For what direction do you want your life to go in to be the leader that you want? And that just came like right away almost in currently where I am in my life in being a leader with the previous question. And it was harder. It was harder for me to come up with the 3 words for acceptance of what does acceptance mean to you as a leader. And they're almost the exact same words. So I appreciate just that almost simplicity of giving the opportunity, like Susan was saying, to expand, even in that those like 2 minutes. And that was just really meant a lot to me.
That's lovely, Megan. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else would like to share? Antoinette.
And thank you. I'm very glad to join you all today. It's 3-word sentences for empathy. Encased together, sensing. Acceptance. A lot of allowing. And choosing the direction. Heart, light, first. Thank you.
That is beautiful, Antoinette. Thank you. And our last one, then we will continue with our official agenda. Who would like to share? Sandy.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure that I did this right, but this is what I did.
Is no right or wrong, Sandy?
I took the 4 words and put them all into the first sentence. So I said, I'd love to show empathy, and I feel such warm acceptance when I can what I head in this direction. Empathy is so needed these days. I'd love to see us all return to the days that we all got along with empathy and understanding of each other. Acceptance is crucial as well. Accept who others are as they are, wherever they are in their journey. And the direction of my journey is to be the best version of myself, to show up for those who need and want my help.
That is lovely. Thank you, Sandy, for sharing. We as leaders should be just cognizant of how we treat ourselves first before we can lead others with the same compassion, the same direction and focus as we are leading our lives and as we are moving forward. So thank you very much for participating in this activity with me. And I am going to hand it over to our MC, Olivia, that we can continue with our show.
Thank you, Irma. Yes, that was a very beautiful exercise, and thank you for all of you for participating. And I am just so honored to be introducing to you our first speaker of the day, and that is Susan Crossman. And it is so thrilling for me to see the growth in Susan. This is probably our third summit together, and each and every time, I'm just so happy to see the progress that she's made. And so a little bit about Susan. She is on a mission to help focus authors, coaches, leaders, and innovators to publish compelling books that will make a difference in their businesses and the world. So imagine you can publish your heart song with Susan. She believes a well-written book can be a powerful force for good in our world, and she takes delight in assisting her clients to that greater peace-driven authority. So her talk title today will be on honing your heart song, how to finesse your writer's craft. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Olivia, Steve, and Irma, and all of our guests. It's wonderful to be here again. It's always such a pleasure to be with the Sing Your Heart Song Summit, where everybody is singing their heart song and trying to find new melodies within that heart song to share it into the world. So I'm delighted to be here and absolutely thrilled to be sharing part of my heart song, which is about finessing your writer's craft. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. Can I share my screen, do you think? I do have some slides that I would like to share here. There we go. There they are. So I run a little business called Crossman Communications, and within Crossman Communications, we have a community called the Awakening Author Community. And the Awakening Author for me is about how we awaken into the author within. Some of us are more of an author than others. And part of what I help people to do is discover that authority within them to help them write the books that they're here to write. So welcome to everybody. We're going to look at a few really interesting topics today, things that I really care about. The 3 different kinds of writer. So I've been working as an author and as a writer for decades now, and I work with people who are expanding their sense of who they are as writers and authors. And so I've identified that there are 3 main writers that I've seen in the world, and I'm going to invite everybody to see which one might you be. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at the craft of writing. So that involves structure, style, and engagement, and also a few little tips on how to improve your writing. So I hope this is fun for everybody. A little bit about me. As I said, I'm a career writer. I've had some wonderful jobs in journalism. I worked for Canada, a couple of very large national news organizations in Canada for a while. I worked at the country's largest provincial ministry, which was the Ontario Ministry of Health. And in that capacity, I worked as a bilingual media relations officer, again, all about the writing. Our department worked on press releases, briefing notes, speeches, all that kind of stuff, the communications function for that organization, for that department. And then I worked in a marketing agency. So why I had those jobs was because my dream as a little girl had been to be a writer. That's all I could think of to do. That's what I felt I was born to do in life. And I was one of those little kids who would climb up into the apple tree in my backyard, and I'd have a tablet with me and a pencil, and I would spend hours writing. And I would write stories, and I would write in my journal, and I would write terrible complaints about my older sister, and I would write all kinds of magical things. I could spend an entire day up there in that tree writing. And so the dream for me had been to one day become a real writer and get paid to be a writer, and also to write books. I suspect there are a number of our participants today who either have written books or want to write a book or are working on a book. And that's really where I've been my entire life, is in that beautiful bubble of, gosh, I just want to write a book. And so time went on, and I had some terrific writing experiences professionally, and those experiences helped me to hone my craft. I worked with a lot of editors in every capacity along the way. For me as a professional writer, there are editors above you, and they really do feel they're above you. Certainly in a news organization, you have editors above you and you answer to them. And so my work as a writer was very much edited along the way. And there are lots of reasons to have different layers of editing in an organization, one of which is really a legal liability. So if you're a news organization and your reporters are writing terrible sentences that are misunderstood all the time, then you could have a lot of problems on your hands. And so that's one of the purposes of the editors, is to make sure that writing is clear as can be, and that the writing is strong and it's really communicates effectively. So that's the tradition that I come out of, is a very demanding editorial position where what I wrote mattered. And so as time went on and I matured into my evolution as a writer, I became very sensitive to the distinctions of good writing in order to be as crystal clear as can be. Along the way, though, as I mentioned, I really wanted to write a book, and I'd been feeling that way for so long. Finally, one day, my husband at the time turned to me and said, "Well, you've been talking about writing a book for a really long time." And I said, "Yeah, I know." And it had been years. It had probably been 10 years at that point that I had said, "Gosh, I want to write a book." And he just looked at me and said, "Well, what's stopping you?" And no one had ever asked me that question before. That book had been forever in my future. And at that moment, my paradigm shifted and I realized I had been stopping me. My self-doubt, my mind trash, my paralyzing fear of being seen, all of that had been getting in my way. So from that moment on, I knuckled down and I started to write a book. But still, there was a lot of mind trash going on inside of me. Much as my heart burned to be a writer, I still had a lot of things happening between the ears and also in my heart that got in my way. And it really wasn't until my husband passed away that I woke up to the fact that if I wanted to be serious about this task of writing a book, I had to really get serious about it, because the clock was ticking. And my husband's death taught me that life does have an endpoint. And it taught me many other things aside from that, which we won't go into here. They're not really pertinent to this journey. But I really, really got busy at that point, finished that first book, and that became the first of 5 books so far that I've written, fiction and nonfiction along the way. And now, this is some years ago. The first book came out about 10 years ago. And along my writer's journey, my heart song melody has been very much of leaning into my writer's world. And these are just a few pictures of scenes from my life. I think pretty much all of them are before the last 2 years, before 2 years ago. I actually have been on a couple of little trips since lockdown, but I haven't got my pictures up here yet. But I do a lot of fun things. And a lot of them are tax deductible because I'm a writer. And when I go on a trip, quite often I write blogs about it. They will feature in my presentations, and they really are a business expense for me. And so I'm able to really enjoy what I do in really big and wonderful ways. So that's a little bit of background about me, where I come from in this writer's journey. I love writing and I love the heart song. And I want to talk to you about the different types of writer. We're going to start with that, because I do think there are 3 kinds of writer. There's the capital W writer, and Steve and I have had some really interesting conversations about that capital W writer, which we'll get to in a minute. There's the messenger writer. So the messenger writer has a message to share and knows that writing a book or writing blogs or writing articles or anything that comes in the writing field, wow, that's a really powerful way to get your message out. And then there's the explorer. And a writer who is an explorer, they are really in it for the adventure. They tend to see writing a book as part of their personal development. It's an incredible achievement to write a book, particularly, and they want to experience that. They love expanding their sense of who they are and what they're on the planet to be. Quite often, for an explorer, that book will support their business or a mission that they have in life, but certainly there's a personal development aspect to writing a book for the explorers. But let's start with the capital W writer. So as I've told you my story about who I am as a writer, I'm a capital W writer. I can't help it. I can't help writing and have never been able to help writing. There has been an outpouring from my heart since I was a little girl to express myself and to expand my craft, because writing is a really, really important craft. It's not something that most of us are born being outstanding at. Even me, even though I am oriented towards writing, I've put in well more than my 10,000 hours along the way to become better and better and better at what I do. But a capital W writer really can't help themselves. Typically, they've always played with words. They love language. A lot of us love word games. I don't know if anybody here likes to play Scrabble. Anybody like that one? Yeah, so that's an earmark of a capital W writer. They love playing that kind of thing. Probably big on journaling. Most of us love to journal, and how we process our feelings quite often is through writing. Poetry. A lot of capital W writers write poetry or did write poetry. I know when I was in high school, I filled notebooks with poetry. A lot of it wasn't all that good. I look back at it now, but it was good enough, because the purpose of it really wasn't to be judged. The purpose of the writing is to express. Most capital W writers have often dreamt of either being a writer as a career path, or they've wanted to write a book like forever, like me. You know, I had that dream and was terrified of it. I believe there is a DNA piece that goes along with being a capital W writer. So for example, in my family, there are an awful lot of writers on my family tree. I have several cousins who have been communications experts in their careers. I have an uncle who, he's passed now, but he wrote a book. I'm descended from a notable Canadian poet, which I found out a few years ago, that she was very active in the mid 1850s, before Canada was even called Canada. And so, you know, there's a piece of DNA that goes along with that. And what goes along with that as well are a cluster of characteristics that I see in me and in a lot of the writers that I work with. One of them is that we're highly sensitive. And I don't know if anybody here was ever told as a young person, oh, stop being so sensitive. What are you being so sensitive for? You know, it was like it was a bad thing. Well, actually, it's a good thing. Because we are so sensitive, we're able to communicate on a real heart level with other people, because we've got the interface. We've got the heart interface buried deep within us that allows us to connect at that level. We are sensitive. And it's a really important thing for the human race. We also are acutely aware of the pain of other people around us. And a lot of us are quite empathic, although that we might not call ourselves empaths, but we are really actually quite tuned in to other people's pain as well, which also makes what we bring to the human race really, really important. Often we're prone to melancholy. We can get really sad sometimes. We get the blues. And if we think of a lot of famous writers, certainly the Irish writers, they have been prone to that deep, deep sense of melancholy, where you can really get yourself in a funk and have a hard time climbing out of it sometimes. And so that's very typical of a capital W writer, highly sensitive, melancholy, probably a little bit neurotic at times. And all of that cluster of emotions and kind of personality precepts, you know, that's part of what makes us fertile writers. That's part of the growing soil of the writing that we have to offer the world. So it's a really, really interesting thing to be a capital W writer. When I think of some of these writers, I think Stephen King is maybe a pretty typical capital W writer. When you look at his career path, he was an English teacher, for heaven's sakes. Like he was oriented towards that kind of a life and did not deny himself that piece of who he is. And I think that's another piece that I'll add to that conversation, this part of the conversation, is that quite often we deny that part of who we are and get straight off onto a different career path. Because as everybody knows, writers don't make any money. And so, that's something I'm proving wrong in my life, by the way. I am busting that paradigm. It's something that a lot of us were trained to believe. And we had very well-meaning parents who shifted us off onto another career path where we might have a chance of supporting ourselves more affluently. But a lot of us did get straight off onto a different track earlier in life. And what I see happening is that a capital W writer will find their way back to a writing life. Oh, Steve's nodding his head. Yeah, I think that's probably, well, and if I can out you, Steve, I think you are a capital W writer as well. Yeah. So that's the capital W writer. But that's not better or the only way to be a writer. A lot of successful writers are messengers. And a messenger has a message to share and knows that writing is the best way to get their philosophy or their belief system out into the world. Often a messenger has a calling to build a business or to do work that's designed to help people overcome their blocks or figure out how to do something more effectively or more easily. There is often a spiritual component to a messenger as a writer. They feel that they really are on a mission. Quite often it's a heavenly mission. It's a divine mission where they recognize they were put on the planet to do something pretty important, and their life has brought them to the point where now, when at the point where they're writing their book or their articles or their blogs or whatever, gosh, they really need to get that out there because there's an urgency around sharing their message. Often they've overcome a lot of difficulties and they're not necessarily strong writers. In my observation, it's more the message that matters to them than the craft of writing. So they haven't spent a lot of their life enhancing their writing skills. Some of them are very good writers to begin with, but it's not the craft that enchants them or the act of communication that enchants them. It's the act of sharing a message that's really what they're focused on. And they recognize again that writing a book is a really powerful way to do that. So they're willing to do the work they need to do in order to get that book out. And I think of people like Wayne Dyer as a messenger. Tony Robbins, I would say, is a messenger. He has lots of books that he's written as well. Brené Brown, she's a messenger. Deepak Chopra, they have spent their lives becoming the funnel through which their messages are meant to flow. And part of that has been acquiring writing skill sets, but I guarantee you every single one of those people has an editor. We all need editors. And so that's really the important aspect of the messenger is you don't have to be a strong writer. If you have a message that you want to get out, you can understand. There are lots of people in the world who can help edit your book. And that's from a developmental structural editing kind of perspective, as well as from the sort of the nitty gritty of how sentences hang together and so on. And then we have, I was going to share Tina Roisfeld. Tina is one of my clients. She recently came out with a book called The Courage to Be True. And I would say Tina is a messenger. So Tina is a status Aboriginal individual in Canada. She's a Canadian. And her grandmother was, she was in our residential school system. And I think probably most people in North America anyway understand that the residential schools that certainly in Canada have been at work were not a good place for Aboriginal children. They were taken away from their families. They were required to speak English. They were required to divorce themselves from their background and their culture and their families. And it was a hideous way to be brought up. And that's how Tina's grandmother was raised. And so Tina's grandmother, as she describes it in her book, she didn't learn how to be maternal in the traditional Aboriginal ways. In fact, she got no training in being a maternal person whatsoever. It was such a brutal experience for her that as a mother, when she came to be a mother, there were a lot of pieces missing. So Tina's mother didn't really have the knack of being a mother either. And on top of that, Tina's mother had a massive number of addictions. So Tina was raised in a family where I think her mother was 16 when she was born. Her father was a year or two older. There was no money. There wasn't a whole lot of hope, and there were a lot of addiction issues. And so that set the stage for Tina, being a little child. She ended up with addiction issues and so on, but Tina decided that that wasn't the life that she wanted. And she really struggled a lot to crawl out of the cocoon of her early life and to become much more than people would have expected her to become. She's now actually a practicing emergency room nurse, and my heart goes out to her in these days where nurses and medical staff generally are having a heck of a time keeping up with the demand, but she's an incredibly resilient person with powerful messages to share. So Tina is not a writer, she's a nurse, and that's what her training has taught her to be. But she knows there's hope for people who have been battling with addictions and other very difficult issues. She has a very big tool chest of tools for people, and she felt she needed to write her book to help other people who've been struggling so they know it's not a dead end. If you have a hard life and you're having a hard time, there is hope available. And Tina's book is one of those pieces of hope that she really, really wants to share with other people. So that's Tina for me is a really powerful example of a messenger. And then we have the explorer, the third type of writer that I see in my work as a coach, writing coach, is the explorer. And as an explorer sees a book and their writing as a path for personal development. And they are often either evolving their business or they're evolving their mission in the world. Quite often they're corporate people as well. They're people with a corporate job, and they're really working hard to experience all they can be as a human being. Often they are really goal-oriented. They love challenges. And as anybody here who has written a book knows, writing a book is a pretty darn big challenge. Writing a serious book is a lot of work. Often the explorers do a lot of speaking. They may or may not be strong writers, but they have set themselves this challenge of writing a book, and they're very excited about achieving that challenge. And they want to make a difference in the world too. So an explorer can also be a messenger, but their primary motivator is not so much the message as it is they really want to achieve something. And so even though the book, writing of the book is a pretty big challenge, they're going to do it just because they can. And in this category, I would put Malcolm Gladwell. Has anybody read anything by Malcolm Gladwell? Outliers, Blink, so on. I would put him in that category, and I'd love to talk to him to see if he would agree with that. Another writer I really like is Mike Michalowicz, and he's written, my favorite book of his is called Profit First. And it's a book about business financing, and it's really brilliant because I'm a word girl, not a numbers girl. And Mike Michalowicz makes the business numbers really make a lot of sense to me. So it's a really well-written book, but it's part of his business empire. That book, all of his books are part of his business that he's putting together. And then the other person that I would bring into this category would be Will Smith. And I don't know if anybody's had a chance to read Will Smith's book yet, called Will, but it's beautifully written. He co-wrote it with a New York Times bestselling author. And so it was a collaborative effort. It's beautifully written, tells amazing stories. And I think that probably that's part of Will Smith's expansion into another dimension of who he is. Another one of my clients I would demonstrate here, who I feel is an explorer, is Paul Weston. So Paul Weston was a military man, and he did his time in the British Army. He spent years and years and years in the British Army, where it's all about endurance, about goal setting, about strategy. There's a real focus on being all you can be in the military. He had a huge success in his military career and then left that to join the business world and is now a business consultant. Again, highly successful business consultant. And he recognized that a book could do great things for his business, but also he set himself the goal of writing a book. And it was really important to him that he write that book because it was a something hard to do, and he really wanted to achieve that. Now he's leveraging that for higher level speaking engagements, meeting more interesting people, building his business globally in a way he wouldn't be able to do without the book. So I'll just take a little break after that fire hose there and just see if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat box, what kind of a writer do you think you are? Are you the capital W, can't help it, this is just who you're born to be writer? Are you the messenger, where you have an important message to share? Or do you think you're an explorer? Just take a minute now and check in and just see where are you on that? Ah, Megan's a messenger, and Maureen's a messenger. Christiane's a writer messenger. Catherine, writer messenger, or messenger writer. Oh boy, great guys. Strong. Yeah, isn't it interesting? And Megan says, I didn't realize there were those 3 categories. Well, I didn't either.
You're blowing
Megan.
my mind first thing in the morning.
Awesome.
You and Irma.
Awesome. Isn't that fun? I just think that's so fun. And there may be more distinctions that I haven't really drilled down into yet, but I just think that's pretty interesting. And none of them are wrong. There's no wrong way to be a writer. Yeah, but I think it helps if you understand that about yourself, so that when we move into the next part of our discussion, which is about style, that you will understand you a little better and maybe figure out what more you need in order to build your writer's toolkit, so that you can expand into that next definition of yourself as a writer. Because I believe we are each on our own writing continuum. There's no wrong spot on that continuum. I'm still learning. Like, one of my topics of study right now is the brain, and how the brain connects with our communication patterns. And like, okay, it's kind of useless information for most people, but I'm a capital W writer, and I follow my heart on, okay, what's going to help me be the next best version of myself. But that's where I am. And I've been writing professionally for decades and decades and decades. So wherever you are on that writing continuum, just tune in and see what is it that you need to do next in order to expand into the next deepest version of yourself, depending on where you are, what kind of writer you are, what you may need. Again, there are no wrong answers in the writing world. Writing is a craft, and it's a skill that can be learned. And we can always learn more about ourselves as writers. So I'm going to start now to go into the next step. And thank you, by the way, for sharing. Oh, Catherine's a researcher. Ooh, yeah, I'm going to have to think about that. Maybe there's a place for that too in our identification of different writers. Okay, so let's get back to sharing here. Oh, there we are. So the next step of this for me is to look at structure, style, and reader engagement. So now you have a kind of a sense of who you are as a writer. So in order to be the best writer you can be, it's important to look at book structure. Like, okay, I'm talking specifically about writing books here, because that's the pond I swim in, is books mostly. So how are you structuring your book, and how are you writing in your writing style, and how can you write for reader engagement? So that's what we're going to be taking a look at next. Not many people are born with an innate sense of how to structure a book. And if they are, I want to meet that person, because this is something I've had to learn as an author and as a book coach and as an editor. I have spent hours learning about book structure. And so if you knew how to do that out of the womb, I really commend you, because there's a lot to know. But there are lots of different ways to do it too. And again, back to the point, well, there's no real wrong way to structure a book, but there are little tips and techniques I can share with you today that will make it easier for you. And that's what we're going to take a look at now, is to find ways to help you take your readers on an adventure, on a journey that they'll find engaging and that they'll be interested in doing, interested in reading, keep reading. Because if your structure is not strong, then your reader will founder. Your reader will have a bit of a hard time following your message, whether you're a messenger or this is an exciting adventure for you, or you're a capital W writer. Your reader is going to be needing some help and getting from the beginning through the middle to the end of your book. And that's what your structure does. Your structure is the framework on which the writing sits. So if you start with a really good structure, and then I look at it as decorating the structure with your writing. It's kind of like a Christmas tree. The structure is the tree itself. And on that tree, we hang garlands of lights and tinsel and beautiful decorations. And we put a star on the top. And we have a lot of fun decorating that Christmas tree, for those of you who do Christmas trees. But the structure is the tree itself. And so we need a pretty strong, straight tree in order for that Christmas tree to end up being as beautiful as we would like it to be. And that's what structure is. And it's also a bit like our roadmap. So if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And I first heard that, I think, in a George Harrison song years ago. And it really stuck with me, because in the context of writing a book, if you don't know where you're going, then you have no clue where you're going to end up. And we'll talk about plotters and pantsers in a minute, because a plotter is someone who strategically lays out their book first, fiction or nonfiction, this can apply to. And a pantser is someone who goes, whoopee, let's write a book. And they sit down and they write a book. And again, there's no wrong way to do it. The pantser will find it harder at the end of writing the book to impose a structure on their book, because they still need to take their reader on a journey that makes sense to the reader. And so, but again, your personality may be a whoopee, let's write a book kind of personality, in which case be aware that you're still going to need structure somewhere. Just your process might not lend itself to structure. So that's, so I'd like to start with one structure that is here's a really easy one. And this is particularly valuable for nonfiction writers, or writers of nonfiction books. I've written both fiction and nonfiction. This is a really great structure for nonfiction. However, you can also apply it to a fictional book. And here's how it goes, is part one is the problem. So the chapters in the first section of your book are all about describing what the problem is. And I am referencing Dr. Sue Morter's book, The Energy Codes, here, because that's a book I've read recently that does an incredibly beautiful job of part one, part two, part three. In part one, Dr. Sue looks at a new way of seeing. She calls it the quantum flip. And so she takes a look at all of the problems people have in their lives. So this is the problem section, and what they struggle with. And she takes a deep dive into problems, into unhappiness, into stress, anxiety, bodies that are giving us pain and breaking down on us. All of that kind of issue is discussed in the first part of her book. Part two, Dr. Sue says, well, I have a solution for you. A new way of being in the world, which is what part two is called, a new way of being, the Energy Codes program. Now, Dr. Sue is very clearly a messenger. She has a message. She has a philosophy and a system that is designed to help people get over their physical stress, their body stress, their anxiety, all of those issues that most of us have struggled with at some point in our lives. Dr. Sue has a solution for that. And in part two of her book, she goes into these 7 energy codes, so 7 chapters for the 7 energy codes that she has to put available to help people live better lives. And then for Dr. Sue, part 3 is the application of the solution. And she calls that part a new way of living the embodied life. And in that part of her book, her chapters focus on using the energy codes in your daily life. So specifically applying the energy codes. And again, I highly recommend that book. It's really well done and really interesting. So that's one way to structure a book. Another one I like is just make a list of 10 things you think your readers either struggle with or that they need to know about, that you know about, that they need to know about. And a really terrific example of that is The Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century. And that's another really great book. It really does, again, a deep dive into all of the things that readers need to know about. And so in that one, the chapter titles are things like A Brief History of the Human Lineage, Ancient Bodies, Modern World, Medicine, Food, Sleep, Sex, Parenthood. So it's just a list of aspects of being human: childhood, school, becoming adults, strictly a list of things that these two authors, actually it's a co-authored book, these two authors feel people need to know about those things. And so all they've done is listed the topics and then written a chapter about each topic. Great way to do it. Solves the problem of figuring out what do people need to know about, and then writing to that structure. Another structure that is my least favorite, I have to admit, is mind mapping. And mind mapping is something, has anybody heard of mind mapping, by the way? Show of hands. Yeah. Does anybody use it a lot? Do you love it?
It's confusing to me. It's overwhelming to me, but I know it works for other people.
Yeah, I'm with you too, Megan. I have tried to love mind mapping, but I don't think I'm visual enough to love that. Like, I tend to be pretty linear in how I perceive things. I'm actually, you've heard of kinesthetic audio and kinesthetic audio and visual. Those are the three main ways people do the world. They either see things or hear things or feel things. I'm a fourth type, which is about 5 to 10% of the population, which is auditory digital. I compute. And so a mind map where there's all these pictures everywhere, I find as well very overwhelming and really confusing, and I get frustrated with it. But some people love it. And on the right here on this slide is a picture of Tim Ferriss's, is it Tim Ferriss? No, it's Getting to Yes. Sorry, different book. Someone has done a mind map of Getting to Yes, which is a very old book. But that's kind of what that mind map looks like. The mind map on the left is a mind map of my 6-week course. I run a 6-week course to help people start writing a book. And I mind map that just for the practice of mind mapping and just make myself do it. Is really what I did. I have clients, though, who have mind mapped their whole book, and they have made incredibly intricate charts of each chapter. So the idea is that in the middle is the main concept of the book. And then you create lines out to the bubbles around the outside of that first main circle. And each of those bubbles is a topic area. So that would be what each chapter would be. And then you draw circles out farther beyond that, which are the specific items that go in that chapter. So you're becoming more and more detail oriented as you move away from the center. And a lot of people have a lot of good luck with that. So that's another one. If you feel that would be a fun way to structure your book. Again, no matter whether you're a messenger, a capital W writer, or an explorer, all of these will work. And then who's heard of the hero's journey? We got some hero's journey fans here. So we have heard a lot about the hero's journey over the years. It was developed by a man by the name of Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell wrote a book called The Hero of 1,000 Faces. And he determined that there were 12 steps in the hero's journey. It's a screenwriting device, actually, that they use it for mostly, but you can use it to map out your book as well. And there are these 12 main steps in the hero's journey. They take us from the hero's beginning point of being at one level of evolution. So often the hero is referred to as a bit of a coward in the beginning. And the steps then are the hero's steps to becoming a hero. So the hero is challenged, the hero gets a mentor. Actually, I think here are the steps. They're in the ordinary world. They hear the call of adventure. Always the hero, at first he says no, he or she says, no, I'm not going on that adventure. That's too hard. It's going to scare me. They say no. Oh, then they meet a mentor. And when I think of this, I think of the Star Wars trilogies. And the first one I ever saw was the one with Luke Skywalker. I think it might have been number 4 in that first nine movie series of the Star Wars series. Luke says no, but then he meets Obi-Wan Kenobi. So Obi-Wan Kenobi was his mentor. And I won't go through all of these steps because you folks can all read them, but it's very much an exterior journey into conquering the world. There is a lot of conflict in a hero's journey story, and the hero has to keep testing him or herself in order to become stronger, tougher, and a better Jedi Knight. And that model, going back to this slide, that model has been used in a lot of really famous movies. And this is an infographic that was put together by a lady by the name of Sarah Maguire that maps out Harry Potter, Star Wars, The Matrix, Spider-Man, Lion King was another one, and Lord of the Rings. They all follow this hero's journey pattern step by step. They didn't miss a step in the development of these stories according to the hero's journey, which is all very well and good. However, one day there was this lady sitting in screenwriter school learning about the hero's journey. Her name was Kim Hudson. She is one of my heroines, if we have to be using that language. But Kim Hudson was sitting in screenwriter school learning about the hero's journey and taking it all in and taking her notes. And the professor was going on about how you have to present the hero, and he's going out and he has allies and he's going to conquer the next group of enemies, which might be orcs or they might be stormtroopers or whatever they are. And Kim Hudson's sitting there, and being a lady of the 80s, I think this might have been, or the 90s, she said, okay, to her professor, this is great, but what's the female counterpart to the hero's journey? Like, what's the heroine's journey like? Because she innately knew, well, our stories are kind of different, I think. And apparently her professor looked at her and said, well, women don't do anything interesting. There isn't one. Well, Kim Hudson figured those were fighting words. And this is where I just tipped my hat to her so much. Off she went. And she reviewed every myth she could find. She looked at Bible studies. She looked at every religious tract she could find. She looked at famous literature. She did an exhaustive study of women's role in story and came up with something she calls the Virgin's Promise. And the Virgin's Promise is the female corollary to the hero's journey. Now, a female person, we're gender neutral here in the story world. A female person or a person who identifies with feminine characteristics can run through a hero's journey storyline, and a male character can run through a Virgin's Promise storyline. It is not gender specific, but it is in nature a little bit different. So the Virgin's Promise story goes through 13 steps, and a Virgin's Promise story is much more of an internal adventure. Whereas the hero has allies, the Virgin has friends. Whereas the hero goes out to conquer the enemy, physically, there's usually a physical battle that takes place. The Virgin is going on an inward journey to discover more of who she is and to discover her own power, her own independence. So she moves from a dependent world into an independent, standing in her own authority way of being in the world. And I highly recommend you get Kim Hudson's book. It's called The Virgin's Promise. It lays this out beautifully. And it also offers an alternative to a hero's journey, which is, but the Virgin's Promise is much more of an internal story. And that resonates with a lot of people that I work with as well, that the Virgin's Promise is a coming of age from an internal perspective than an external perspective. So I'd love to stop for a minute here now, and let's love to hear any feedback you have about story and structure, and any feedback for me on any of that. Oh, Megan thinks of the Odyssey. Yeah, that's a really, really interesting one too, for sure. That's definitely a hero's journey story, is the Odyssey. Has anybody used any of these in any of your writing? Oh, Maureen, I'd love to hear from you.
Hi, I am a blog writer and I have all these blogs, and I kind of had a structure in the beginning. I wrote about my journey and, as you said, the problem. And then I had the solution, and then I just started writing blogs for the application. I see that now. I see what I've done. However, I'm at the point where I definitely want to put all of that information into a book. I just don't want to do all that detailed structure stuff and editing. And I am that typical, messenger, truly not necessarily a strong writer. I just had a message I wanted to share with the world. And I have a beautiful friend who has done some editing for me because my goodness, my writing is not strong, although my heart message is. And I have this belief that it's going to cost me tons of money to hire an editor to get my book written. So I stop. So I'm just at this point in my life where I'm not sure where to go next.
Well, congratulations. That's very exciting because that's where creativity comes from. It's those places where we get stopped and stuck and we get frustrated, and out of that can come enormous things. So would you like my feedback on all that?
Yes, please.
Okay. It's not unusual. And I really commend you for recognizing where you are as a writer, like what works for you and what resonates with you as a writer. So hiring editors is definitely one option. And it can cost a lot of money. And I won't sugarcoat that, because if structuring isn't your biggest skill set, there are people out there who love that. That's really what they're on the planet to do, is to be those people. So you can also go to places like Upwork and hire someone to help you. I hesitate about recommending really low cost sites, because you get what you pay for in editing. Definitely.
I agree with that. I believe I'm to the point and level in my life and my business that it's got to happen, and it's got to happen soon. I'm just feeling that, this has been coming to me for a long time. And just over the last week, I've just been getting that feeling that it's time, and whatever it takes, you need to do this. So not only, the money, it's also trusting that person with my words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally get it. That's about your voice. For
Yes.
sure. And respecting your voice. And I always recommend people interview editors before you engage them to work with you. Interview a number of editors and wait for that click. There's a click that happens when you found the right person to work with you. Because as editors, we bring our whole selves to the game. Like, we can't edit beyond our worldview. And so if your worldview is this big, you can't work with an editor whose worldview is this big, right? Like that.
I love that.
You don't fit. Your worldview doesn't fit inside their worldview, but they can't do more than give you their worldview. Like, they don't have the capacity to do that. So it's not fair to expect them to do that. The other thing probably about you, Maureen, is you're a creator. You live in the world of ideas. You love ideas, and you've got some good ones. And the challenge with an idea person, like a highly conceptual person, is that you have to tell a story with details. And the details happen down here. You live out here.
You're right. That's exactly who I am. And when you showed me that last thing with the bubbles and all the details, my eyeballs just went, I don't like what I see. It's too much stuff, and it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
So thank you for noticing that. I am very conceptual. And I just got a beautiful message in the chat saying, trust Susan. So Susan, you and I are going to step into this together. It's going to happen, because I know it is time. It is time. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
And thank you. I so appreciate that, and bless you for that, Maureen, because the other thing that I know is that you have all of you, and particularly we're talking to Maureen right now, but you have spent your entire life becoming the only person on the planet who can write this book. There is no one else on this planet who can write your book, and you were tailor-made for the job. And I believe in a higher power, and I believe we are continually facilitated throughout our entire lives, knowingly or unknowingly, to become the people who are here to share that message. Especially messengers are people who have been burnished. for exactly what you are here to share. So I invite you to, all of you, step into that and understand that this is part of your purpose on the planet and part of what you're here to be. So
Thank you, Susan.
yeah, let's chat. I'd love to do that.
Yes, please.
So do I still have, oh, sorry, Megan, go for it.
No, I see Irma with her red light, but just to say what, to add on to Maureen, that I had a similar situation where I wanted to write my book and I really wanted to, and I had my story and I really wanted to, and it was frustrating. And then finally with Stephen King's on writing and Natalie Goldberg's writing Down the Bones, it took another accident where I literally, it was just physically, the only thing I could do was sit in a chair and not do anything except have a notebook and a pen, like physically couldn't do anything else. And that's when I the book found me and I found the book, and we kind of wrote each other at the right time. And that's when the nonprofit editor, publisher, we all found each other at the right time.
Beautiful.
It was, oh, I want to write it. Oh, I want to write it. When, how, when. And it was just, it happened finally.
Yeah.
When it was supposed to.
Yeah. And that's the divine timing aspect of all of this too, is there is divine timing at work as well. And we beat ourselves up because we didn't do it yet. It took me 13 years altogether to write my first book. And I was beating myself up because I was a professional writer. Like, it's supposed to be easy for me and it really wasn't. And what's wrong with me? But there's nothing wrong with you. It's exactly like you're saying, Megan, the coalescence of everything in the universe has to come together in order for it to be the right time. And it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, you too.
Wonderful. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
This is amazing, Susan. I mean, you have just generated so many sparks of
Yay.
inspiration.
And just one last thing. Sorry to interrupt, Olivia. I have lots to share about the style, structure, and engagement, and it's all in my free gift. So even though I didn't get to it now, the free offer that I have for everybody is all of that information is contained in there, so you won't miss it.
Exactly. It is copied in the chat for you. And before we segue to our next segment, I did want to just bring up Lee Little, because Lee is here and he's worked with Susan. And I just wanted to give you a few minutes, Lee, just to share what that was like for you, because it didn't happen like overnight. How long did it take to write your memoir?
Hi, thanks, Olivia. Yeah, so it took maybe, I think we worked about 6 years or so. Hi, Susan. And yeah, thank you just for briefly kind of inviting me to come in just to say hi to the group. And always love listening to Susan share. And I could talk for hours on my experience working with Susan. And thanks for the invite. But yeah, it's definitely, we're all in the right place. I'm in the right place today. Susan's been I'm biased, right? Because I work with her, but I know that we all know and would agree that Susan's a great instrument for building bridges to allowing us to really explore our creativity through whatever expression that we're going to go through that. So and just also my memoir that Susan helped me with is The Wounded Here. It's out on Amazon right now, so just thought I would present that or show you guys that as well too. It's my surviving childhood trauma. And but yeah, thanks for letting me have a bit of space here. And Steve, it's good to see you. I love this community so much. Olivia, this thing about singing and listening to our hearts, is so profound, and it's really hard to explain and comprehend sometimes. Really, what's happening and what's going on. We try to explain things. I try to, and I just sometimes it's just good for me to accept the mystery You know, like Madonna says, life is a mystery, right? But anyways, you guys are all amazing, and I got a lot of good energy from just listening a little bit to what's going on here today. So thanks again.
Fantastic, Lee. And this is what we wanted to demonstrate to you. I mean, Lee has been an active participant of the Sing Your Heart Song Summit. He was able to align himself with Susan Crossman and, you know, participate in her book coaching services. And here we have this beautiful result of his memoir. So thank you, Lee, for doing that guest appearance. We're running a little bit behind schedule, but we do have another amazing speaker coming up for you, Nancy Adair. And by request, we do have our heart song that we want to play for you. So let's just play a few minutes of that music, kind of give us that segue break, and then stick around to the end because Susan has an amazing gift too that we will spin the wheel for. But, you know, just to be respectful of Nancy, we're going to go ahead and play you a few minutes of the prosperity chant. One moment here.